Can you handle it? Through the fire and the flame, the fury as a monster bellows out your name. The embers rain. Will you ever be the same? How can one be sane against an unstoppable blazing mane? Or do you simply look and go? Seriously, another one in the game? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Sunbreak hunters all. How are you doing? Today then, I want to talk about fire. Sorry, I don't know what happened. That's on me. More specifically, fire monsters. Here's an interesting fact for you. There is over 300 monsters in mainline Monster Hunter. Over 100 of them are fire element monsters. A third, or well, near as damn it, are fire monsters. And basically, that's a lot of fire. So, I can ultimately understand where a certain community sentiment comes from along the lines of, more fire monsters? And it's a sentiment that I have felt most keenly all the way back in World and Iceborne with the various mod shows that me and Cotton did, where, yes, mostly every mod monster was a fire monster. But I think that was more of a symptom as fire was the most amount of moves to work with to blend into a new monster, rather than a deliberate creative choice, but I digress. What I don't feel, however, is, right now, that, towards fire monsters. I still think they're absolutely awesome. And the reason I think that is because when you hear fire monster, of course what comes to mind is fireball, fire breath, a flamethrower, your classic Rathalos affair. But don't tell Rathian. And all the way up to Fatalis, who is the pinnacle of classic fire, you know? There is no better example of fire monster as you imagine it, as it intuitively makes sense, taken to the 11th degree as, well, the Big Burn. But the thing is, a monster being fire doesn't inherently mean a monster is boring. In fact, far from it. In fact, I'd actually argue because there is so many fire monsters, inherently, you have to be extra creative in making a fire monster stand out. So when we look at Rise and Sunbreak specifically, or indeed Sunbreak very specifically, or indeed Sunbreak's title updates very specifically, yes, you've got Gold and Silver Rathian, yes, you've got Seething Basil, yes, you've got Flaming Espinas, yes, you have got our new Mizutsune friend, but in everything that I just said, you could not have a more diverse collection of monsters, despite them all sharing the ability to turn you to a pile of ash. Gold and Silver Rathian, again, have that classic fireball, fire breath, that aesthetic, the, well, as I keep saying, classic fire monster. Basil is, of course, a fire monster, but he drops explosive scales that bloom up into little flowers of purple before detonating like mini nuke grenades, on top of, you know, he himself becoming a living nuke as he bombards you from overhead as a fighter plane. That could not be more different than the Rathian and Rathalos, yet they're both fire monsters. Flaming Espinas, he has that poison and he has that paralysis mix, which is a signature of Espinas, which inherently changes his fire. Yes, big fireballs, but at the same time it comes packaged within that unique Espinas coating, which gives it a whole new breath of life than other flaming monsters. And of course, I mean, need I say anything more than bubbles? They go pop! Obviously, the existence of Soulseer and Soulseer Light, Soulseer Diet in Apex Mizutsune is a little bit of an overlap, but that really isn't too much of an issue because rare species are gonna rare species. Every single rare species is incredible bar none, aesthetically, fight-wise, and honestly flavor. And that's easy to see when, yes, on the surface, fire Mizutsune, but then you look that little bit deeper and get, well, liquid fire in the form of the soap, homing explosive bubbles, the violet color of the flames. You still get that sliding that Mizutsune is known for, but in that flaming manner, and it couldn't be more different from not just the other fire monsters, but from the other Mizutsunes, and that's really, really neat. Hell, we have a rare species of fire as an example in Molten Tigrex, which is inherently just Tigrex, but what if explosions also?
It's brilliant, 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 I tell you. Genius, I say.
And that turned out to be one of the most loved, intense, and epic fights ever in Monster Hunter. Massive, slow, freight train of fiery death Tigrex. And again, that is very different from the other, 100 plus fire monsters. And I think that's kind of what I really want to get across today, or at least talk about, or at least ask your feelings on, because yes, I get it. Thunder, water, ice, and especially dragon obviously don't get seen as much. But also, we're monster hunting in a world of dragons. Obviously, flame is going to appear more than anything else, but that just gives so many excuses to turn up the heat in so many different ways. And when you compare those different ways, I mean, even something like Magna Malo, Scorn Magna Malo, that's technically fire, right? But hellfire, purple, the way that that's used, the ghostly aesthetic of it, that is a whole other branch, but technically stems from, the mothership of flame. Obviously, you've got the Ignactors, the Almudrons, the lava burrowers covering themselves in it, heating up. That's a whole other branch. To stay with Sunbreak, Pyrarachna. That's obviously a fire monster, a bit of blast, but using, the Spider Soldier Children, which is a movie that I either would never watch or would want to watch, and I can't really decide which. And in doing so has this sort of detonation thread fuse that yes results in a fiery explosion, but nothing in the game gets anywhere close to, using small monsters as an anchor point for a fuse detonation at said anchor point. That's absolutely badass. So yes, while the colour orange may appear a lot on our canvas of hunting, the brushstroke and the technique of the artist changes drastically every single time, and I think that's definitely worth remembering. Even to use my absolute favourite monster in Brachydios, Raging Brachydios. That is explosive slime. Slime! Symbiotic slime mold that forms a puddle and then detonates in fury. That's technically a fire monster, but again, it could not be more different. Hell, even to use a maybe cheap example, Electrion's a fire monster. Yes, he's also an everything monster, but still technically, obviously, fire is very much a main theme of him, and one of the elements he leans on probably more than the others. So I do think there is so much creativity within the fire element, so much room to use it in ways that we've not imagined, that I don't think inherently any oversaturation of fire monsters should be greeted with, but more, ooh, okay, I wonder how they're going to make this fire monster stand out, because it's going to have to work so much harder to stand out. To use another element as an example, for me, Namiel is obviously incredible. Water, thunder, a tentacle dragon, amazing. But if you said to me, hey, they're putting in a new Elder Dragon and it's water, as they did indeed say to us in Iceborne, that by itself is enough, right? It doesn't really matter how it uses water. Cool, a water Elder Dragon, just a basic tidal wave, that's neat. And that's because there's not that many water monsters relative to the others, so it doesn't take a lot to get us excited. Whereas fire, that elicits a response of, okay, so how are they going to make this one different? It's probably going to be above and beyond. It's probably going to be very unique. It's probably going to do something much more creative than the fire equivalent of just do big spout of water, which works still for a water monster for the most part, because again, water isn't that used. So that's inherently, I think, something to remember and think about. And I would love to know what your thoughts are about this thinking. When you see a new fire monster, as we've seen lots of in the title updates, do you get that feeling, or do you get that excitement? Even again, another example, Kulftaroth, Molten Gold Breath. A fire monster, but molten gold breath in a molten gold cave that drips on you when it gets hot. There is so much room in a flame, alright? There's no other way to say it. There is so much room for monster activities in a flame. And I think that's especially, maybe ironically given the subject matter, cool. Because, like, not hot, because, like, fire, you know how it is. In any case, yes, let me know. Does fire still get your engine, well, a-burning? Or does it leave you a little bit tepid? I personally think that as long as a monster is fun, creative, and a good fight, it kind of really doesn't matter what element it is, because at this point, Capcom have more than proven they know how to deliver a kick-ass monster no matter what the theme. So I am certainly massively excited for Title Update 2. Like if you enjoyed this, then subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of this channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.